Welcome to the Odd Ones Out podcast. If you ever feel like you're on the outside looking in, you are not alone. Let's challenge our limiting beliefs and embrace who we truly are. Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Odd Ones Out podcast. Say hello, Maz.
Hello, Maz.
I can't believe you just said that.
Of course you can.
I did sound a bit of a knob though, fair enough. And I'm Becky. And yes, we are the hosts and current only guest stars of the Odd Ones Out podcast. Just to recap, if you haven't listened to our podcasts before, we're married and we are currently exploring as individuals and as a couple kind of the route to self-enrichment and being everything that we feel we could be and fulfilling who we are as individuals mainly. So previous episodes have gone through root convictions that are the foundation levels of therefore driving behaviours that ultimately hold us back on a day-to-day basis from being ourselves. And this week, it's my turn to talk about one of the driving behaviours of not feeling good enough, which is my root conviction. I previously discussed food addiction, and I thought I was embarrassed about talking about food addiction and that it was going to be tricky, but the more this one's kind of been looming as a behaviour, the more embarrassed I am about this one. So maybe I'm just going to have it every single time because we are talking about anger. I don't know where to start, actually.
It's interesting, even before we started recording, that you said a couple of times you felt really embarrassed about it. And I understand why you find the whole subject of anger a difficult one, but why embarrassed?
Actually, do you know, I think part of it is more my assumption on what others would assume I mean by anger. So
anticipating others' judgment.
Yeah, but also, someone being angry, therefore, is quite combative. Someone being angry, it's quite a testosterone-led kind of male gender type thing. Aggressive, angry.
Yeah.
And actually, that's not me. But I do suffer from anger as a behaviour that comes out when I'm not feeling right.
Yes.
And I suppose this episode's going to be about, because it isn't premeditated, I haven't mapped out what I'm going to be discussing, but I want to explore where I think it comes from and what I mean by it in day-to-day life. Because I can get angry quite quickly when I'm under stress.
Yeah.
And that anger can come out in terms of resentment, or it comes out in a kind of physical containment where I feel myself shaking. And it was really interesting how you were listening to a blog or watching a video by a guy who admitted to suffering from anger, and he'd been trying to manage it for quite a while. And you said something about him actually going out and actively seeking fights to get the anger out of his system. Am I right?
I think it was Peter Attia. I don't remember which podcast it was, sorry. But yeah, he was talking about how his anger had just become a part of his life and that he found himself picking a fight with someone in a car park and just getting inordinately angry over seemingly nothing.
Yeah.
And he hadn't sort of worked out quite what was driving it until he did some work to that end and figured some of it out at least.
But the thing is, you were talking through him and the things that he had experienced when feeling angry. And whilst I hadn't done those things, and I have absolutely no inclination or desire or have never experienced a driving need to go and pick a fight. Him talking about his anger and feeling the need to go there, I empathised.
Yeah.
It wasn't just, I understand, I empathised. I was like, there are times I feel that angry, I have no idea what to do with it. And I've never, it's as an adult, I've not played it out in terms of physical, but I did have that. I think one of the things that's contributed was that I grew up with a very angry father.
Yeah.
And I suppose there are times where I feel angry, and now that I've acknowledged anger is something that I suffer from, I can identify times when I feel angry and it's actually not me. Yeah. I'm able to say, hang on, is this how I feel, or is this a learnt behaviour in terms of how I should feel with this having happened?
Yeah.
So there are occasions where I'm able to divulge myself of responsibility by saying it's my dad's fault. But at the end of the day, if I'm playing it out, even if it's only in my head, even if my anger is not necessarily affecting anyone else, it's there, and I'm a grown-up. And I need to start working on it. It's one of the things I'm trying to work on to be more me, and that path to self-enrichment. So I don't know, should I just quickly cover off the kind of ways anger came out as a child?
I think it would probably help. I mean, I was just thinking that maybe it would be good to start with that and then go into, because as you were saying, I think your assumption is that most people associate anger with this really kind of alpha sort of aggressive behavior, punching holes in the wall.
Yeah.
But actually, my experience of your anger is more the low level stuff, more it takes very little to go wrong with your day when you start. And I think a lot of it is internal. You sort of berate yourself, or you get angry because something came out of nowhere and interrupted your carefully planned schedule. And so I think really to give people a better idea of what it looks like coming from you, it is more that sort of drip effect. It's often sort of there, but never, an overwhelming thing. As you say, not a physical thing.
I remember, actually, you saying that's reminded me. I remember finding out that you don't feel angry when you hurt yourself.
Yeah, not deliberately. If I fall over and bash my knee or something.
You might be embarrassed or a bit annoyed. But
I don't.
So I discovered about a year or so ago, I burnt myself accidentally on the grill tray in the oven. And the fury that went through my mind with the feeling of that pain, rather than an ouch or an ow, I feel sorry for myself, poor me type thing, it was pure rage. That's all I felt with that pain. Pain equaled pure rage. Yeah. And I remember saying, and I did a really loud noise. And in fact, I felt really bad because our girls were in the other room with you, and I scared them because of how loud and aggressive the sound was about me having hurt myself. Yeah. So I had to go in and explain, it was really painful, and I was able to show them the burn and kind of help them understand. But I walked away, and I remember you saying, you said something like, I don't understand. Why did you have to sound like that? Why was it not just an ow? Why? And
that wasn't me being judgmental. It was me. It seemed, at least from my experience, it seemed out of proportion with what. I mean, obviously it hurt, but I and maybe I'm in the minority, but I've never experienced that kind of level of anger over something that might happen out of the blue like that.
No, I've asked friends since just to find out if you're the anomaly or I am, and pretty much everyone said no, they don't feel angry, they just feel sorry for themselves. And I think so you're right, it is that little things can make me angry, and it's not necessarily the response that one would expect. Now if I pick apart the whole I've hurt myself, I feel angry, it makes complete sense when I then share that my dad was quite a strong physical disciplinarian, and therefore being hit either repeatedly around my head, or when I was really little, I was also caned once. I have to say once, but it's still, for me, at the time, I grew up thinking at home by my dad. So I think I'd said the word 20 as 20. And then he was angry with me for not pronouncing it properly. And so he made me say the word 20 times. And on my 20th time, I thought, cheeky little fucker that I was, I'd say 20. And it riled him so much that he made me go and choose a bamboo cane from our garden. And I didn't know why. So I chose the thinnest, lightest one, thinking that would be easy to carry back into the house, only to find out that actually the thinnest, lightest one's quite painful when you're hit across the backside with it for saying the word 20. So that's, I mean, it's at the time when I remember growing up, I was like, well, I deserved that because I did something I shouldn't have done. And I knew that I'd get hit. And it's only as an adult that I realised, hang on a second, and especially as a mother, hang on a second, that's quite barbaric. And that response to a child doing something that's cheeky or natural kind of boundary pushing, why on earth did it have to result itself in such a physical way?
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't my eldest sister, who's 8 years older than me, where she was, I remember being watching her being pushed onto the ground with his fists and then being kicked on the stomach when he couldn't get to her with his fists.
Yeah.
And again, I'd think as a child, well, fair enough, because she'd put a knife up to my throat to tell me not to do something. But she was playing out as a 14-year-old behaviour that she'd seen him do, not necessarily with a knife, but just that whole, I'm aggressive.
Yeah.
And he was then furious with her for holding a knife up to my throat. So as a child of 6, I was like, okay, yeah, I see this happening. She shouldn't have put a knife up to my throat. That's really, really bad. So dad's meeting that with just punishment. But at the same time, I felt guilty because I was watching her being so badly hurt by him. Anyway, I digress. This is not about my dad's anger thing. But this is...
But in a way, it is. I mean, I understand you might not have much more to say about it, but that is...
No, I feel bad going in depth. I'm not...
Oh, yeah, well, he's dead now. It's fine. But the thing is that is it's key to your kind of issues surrounding anger, because I think at any stage, it doesn't have to be when you're a child, when you get used to something that you shouldn't be used to, and when you just assume, oh, that's part of life, it then becomes incredibly difficult to untangle it, because you've now cemented it in your head as something normal.
Well, for me, pain is I'm angry. And I think part of that is because I would be physically disciplined for things that I, especially as a teenager, I knew damn well wasn't that bad. And so it got to the point where I was like, stop. And I also, even though it's now that I realised the driving force behind it was him getting his shit out.
Yeah.
Overly stressed vicar, call the Daily Mail. Overly stressed vicar takes his stress out on his children. Giving everything to the community, being the most amazing vicar. I am proud of what he achieved in his community and the people that he helped. But I'm also fucked off with them that they took so much of him and he gave so much to be that person that he had to take out the balance. The counterweight was him taking it out through physical disciplining on his family. And so I understand now, even then I would be like, I don't think I hadn't identified explicitly, he's hitting me because he's stressed out today and therefore he can't manage his anger. I've riled him incredibly quickly. It shouldn't have been able to rile him that quickly. It shouldn't also come out as in terms of physical discipline. But I knew something wasn't right, and it wasn't. And so therefore I started immediately building that I'm angry, I've been hit, I'm angry, I've had pain, I'm angry. And now... my anger of hurting myself, whenever I hurt, it doesn't matter how I might do it, I might accidentally knock myself, but it's a constant array, oh, you idiot.
Yeah.
Or stronger, depending on my day that I'm having already, furious with myself for having hurt myself, even if it's just a knock.
Yeah.
So I kind of get that. That's nicely, neatly packaged. Oh, okay, I get it. It's my dad. He hit me. He made me angry because he hit me. Now I'm getting it. I can unpack it. But I did also, as you say, you're watching it. It's natural behaviour. My mum wasn't necessarily an angry person, but she was dismissive when we were growing up. And I think that's down to the low mood of having to cope with the husband that she had.
I was going to say, if you don't mind me saying, the impression I get is that she was quite bitter and a bit sort of resentful.
I think she'd say that herself.
No, I think she would.
She is a night and day person. From the point where he died when I was 17, she kind of changed overnight.
It wasn't a good relationship.
No,
it really wasn't ideal.
It wasn't ideal. So I'm going to have to say that to anybody who might be listening to this who knows my mum now. She's a babe and I love her and she's amazing. She wasn't the easiest mother to have, but I think that's because of her own things that she was dealing with. But so let's go back to I wasn't necessarily seeing her anger. I was seeing her dismissiveness, shortness, kind of hastiness, but it wasn't necessarily anger. But I did see it, obviously, from my dad through the way he disciplined us, or from his stress, and him even having the sound effects of feeling angry and frustrated about something, that when he wasn't then kind of taking it out on us through physical discipline of short-tempered response to our behaviour.
Yeah.
And then my eldest sister, as the only child for 6 years until my middle sister came along, obviously took the brunt of everything. And she in turn became somebody who was very angry. And again, maybe this is something that she's not necessarily worked through yet, but I have to be able to just be able to say honestly, as someone who was 8 years younger than her, I saw her anger, I saw my dad's anger. I became somebody who quite easily would respond to a difficult time by feeling angry. And that has stayed with me through even to now, where I will be angry mainly, as you say, with myself.
Yeah.
A lot of this, I'm not good enough, rather than just feeling self-pity. I'm not good enough, I won't do that, or I'm not good enough, I can't put myself forward. Actually, I'm not good enough, and I feel really fucking resentful about this thing that validates me not feeling good enough, or I feel really angry about it.
Yeah, and I just as you're talking, I think a lot of this really, I mean, specifically your issue, the issue we're talking about now is anger. But I think a lot of it has to do with the wider thing of emotional health. And I think you are kind of similar to me, really. You're very much an emotional person and very sensitive. And I think where our experiences are different, as I may have said in the previous episode, I was a very emotional, sensitive person, but there wasn't anything to pick up on. You know, it was a blank slate. No one got angry. No one got overexcited. There was nothing. So I didn't have anything to pick up on. You had, as I think you've mentioned before, the neglect.
Yeah.
On a lot of levels.
Parents are busy.
Yeah, an absence of emotion, really.
Yeah.
But the one key emotion you did experience was anger.
Yeah.
And so as an emotional person, a child, it must be very easy subconsciously to go, well, this is how people express themselves.
That's true.
And at the same time, you're getting some of that stuff out, or it's all being funneled into the sort of the anger side of things. It means that you consequently get to neglect the other emotions that you might have. So I think sometimes when you feel angry or intolerant or frustrated, it's actually something deeper, sort of masquerading as a sort of a more visceral emotion.
Well, like even something as innocuous as people using the term hangry. I feel hungry. I feel hangry.
Yeah.
I feel angry because I'm hungry a lot.
Yeah.
It feeds, pardon the pun, my food addiction in part, because I don't like feeling that anger of not being able to eat. Now, that kind of comes from neglect. We weren't fed very well at all as a child, as in not just bad food, as you'll hear from my food addiction episode, it was no food. And so not having food would make me feel like I'm being denied something or not being nurtured.
Yeah.
And then there would be a resentment for it. And then I'd feel angry, because you're right, it's the one emotion that we explored. I should actually speak to my middle sister about this, because she's someone who's quite calm and would shut herself away, and I don't necessarily see her as having the anger issue that my elder sister and I have. So note to self, go and speak to her and find out if she ever has that anger thing.
But again, that could just be her core personality. I mean, my younger brother is I mean, similar-ish to your sister, where they're both very calm, collected, aren't prone to emotional outbursts. Maybe maybe your sister just happened to be somebody who took things in her stride a bit more and was
not
a little
emotional.
bit...
She did once say to me, "You're very emotional because you laugh a lot." and she, in a conversation where she was saying that she found it difficult to relate to me and my older sister because we're quite emotional and she's not.
So she just doesn't have that
maybe,
in her, perhaps.
Maybe that's what it is. Because you're right, I don't remember feeling particularly happy or loved or silly or any of those things. But anger was a very, in my mind, because it's what I grew up with, clean emotion.
Yeah.
If you're feeling frustrated or if things aren't working out or you're disappointed by someone, there was no nuance. There wasn't the frustration, the disappointment. There was no help with me understanding how to communicate what I was feeling. So therefore, everything became anger.
Yeah.
And you would feel better once you'd shouted at your sister about how unhappy you were. And I mean shouted. I mean, this is where in this household, I will raise my voice because I'm on the fourth time of having said something. And then, and at that point, because I can boom, because I grew up in a household where we shouted at each other in anger, I'm capable of projecting quite well, thank you very much. So on my fourth time and I raise my voice, actually the kids pick up and listen. But I'm not shouting in anger, I'm just able to project. But I think back, I'm like, actually, there was a lot of angry shouting. And if I'm not listened to by the girls, I do get angry. Rather than frustrated. I'm having to pick through now. Actually, not every single response has to be anger, even if I'm not displaying it because I'm, a self-focused parent and self-aware that I don't want them to pick up on something. But I will still feel that anger.
And you can, as I was sort of saying before, you can mislabel lots of things as anger when it might be underneath that. You might feel sad. You might feel fear. You might feel all sorts of things that you'd categorize as, I suppose, negative, but they just come out as anger, or at least you experience them as anger. Because I think it's noticeable that since I've known you, and we've been together for 17 years, sometimes you will find the gentler, if you like, negative emotions, the sadness, the fearfulness. You find them harder to experience because maybe, as you say, because in your mind they're not as clean. It's a bit sort of muddy and there's no catharsis, is there?
But also, I think that they're definitely they're emotions that children quite naturally experience. It's more natural for a child to feel sad, left out, disappointed than angry. Yeah. I mean, so if you're a child and you're not seeing those emotions or being helped to understand those emotions, how do you ever explore them? Because once you've moved on from childhood, where's your next stage to be able to say, oh, I feel sad or I feel upset?
I think in real terms, you've missed out on a developmental stage.
Yes, and anger.
Yeah, well, because your parents are, I mean, one of their jobs is to hold your emotions for you, so that when you experience them as a child, everything is a playground. You get to try things out. So if you feel sad or you feel disappointed or afraid, in an ideal world, your parents or those close to you will be able to hold that for you, maybe sort of reflect it back or get the child to sort of realise that those emotions are normal and part of everyday life, and they're not in themselves difficult or out of control or things to sort of shun or push out of the way. But because, going back to what I was saying, because you had that double whammy of the really sort of dramatic anger from your dad, but also that low-level constant neglect from others, you didn't really get to, I can't imagine you got to experience those normal emotions and yeah, how would you know what to do with them?
No, and I think that's one of the things that I really want in my quest to being myself. How do I feel is a really important question to ask myself and try my best to understand the nuances. And I think actually just if there is anyone listening who thinking about what Maz said about holding your child's emotion, my best friend is a child psychologist in a school, and he's trained as a psychologist, and he was talking to me, I was talking to him about one of our girls once, and she seemed to be, I was seeing her behaviour as she was angry, because everything's anger in my mind, and even Maz was like, no, I think she's just frustrated, or I think she's just unsure. And I was like, no, I think she's angry. And so I spoke to him about it, and he said, try it where you're helping her communicate how she feels by you saying, first of all, I wonder if you're feeling this way, or I wonder if you're feeling this because, to help her then in turn say, no, that's not true, or yes, that's true. So just in case, it just came to me as one of the tips that he gave me, and actually it worked really well. And it helped me understand that she wasn't feeling angry, and it helped her communicate how she was feeling. But I just wanted to quickly cover that off just in case it helped someone with their own kind of talking to children.
Well, whether you're a child or even as an adult, if you struggle with partly with suppressing some of these emotions, it's really important to give yourself the leeway to figure out what those things are and how you actually feel. I mean, as a child, your kind of emotional well-being was almost dictated to you. It was forced on you. So you didn't have the room to explore that stuff. But I think everybody needs that. And I think you're managing to do it kind of much more these days. But you need that space to figure out exactly what's going on and to accept it for what it is and to let it just run its course.
And I think also to feel it's okay to feel angry, because if I think it's because I don't want to be my dad, and I know I'm not. I know 100% I've never exhibited the behaviours that he did, either to our children, actually maybe one or twice, not to our kids, but maybe to you. I think early on I was quite angry and would kind of push you away, and I think I did push you a couple of times when I got super angry. I think I have to be honest about that, because I think that's important.
I think there were parts of being honest again. I think there were parts of me being quite at least with you being quite sort of emotional and quite open about it, that you found a bit difficult at first. Yeah. So I think you did some of your kind of, what's the right word? Sort of experimenting with how you felt with me. And so some of it was a bit sort of, things came a bit out of the blue, and some of that was anger, some of it was other stuff, but it was never anything. It was never anything sort of dramatic.
No,
it was
but
all stuff I could cope with.
There's me saying, I hope I've never, and then I suddenly remembered actually 17 years ago. It was a bit, or maybe 16 years ago. But the point is, because I don't want to be him, and it's not like I have to hold back from hitting someone. I just have it. It's not in me.
No.
I'm just not someone who needs to physically discipline someone or cause a fight or need to have that physical contact. Fortunately, I heard that he's not passed that on in any way. But I still don't want to be him, and I don't want to be an angry person. So I try to ignore it or move on from it and roll my sleeves up. But actually, I think I need to start with the whole, it's okay to feel angry. Now, why do you feel it? Is it really anger? And then start to pick it out. But first of all, I've got to just give myself that space to say, okay, that's how you're feeling. Let's sit with the fact that you're feeling that way, and then let's pick it apart a little bit more. But one of the things that I really appreciated, because Maz is incredible at trying to help push forward me being me and embracing all of me and moving to one side the things that aren't me, that are learnt behaviours that are holding me back. And if he sees something like that or hears something like the podcast that I referenced earlier on about this guy who was, suffering from anger, he'll share it with me. And one of the things that in fact, it might have even been this same guy, but one of the things that you were suggesting to me a few weeks ago was to actually start doing voice notes.
It was the same guy.
And these compassion voice notes have been really helpful, to the point where actually there are a couple of days that go by where I don't even do them because I don't feel the need. It's actually working so quickly.
Yeah.
But let me explain again, because again, I want to share things that have helped me with anyone who might be listening, either who suffers from anger themselves or who knows someone who does. These voice notes have been super helpful at the point where I start feeling stressed out. So I've got multiple deadlines. I'm a doer. Unfortunately, I'm not naturally a doer, but I have over time become this person who has lots of lists and I don't feel a sense of achievement. Maybe it's linked to the not good enough, unless I have lots of things that I've achieved, that I've done. I've got my tick box. And also it kind of feeds into my, woe is me. But I've got to do this and this and this and this. I won't lie. It kind of helps in some way for me to, just feel sorry for myself. But I get things done. Hey, give a job to a busy person. You want things organised, you want things done, give it to me. It'll be done. They'll be done well. But that in turn, I end up starting to feel resentful, or the deadlines that I have, either to deliver a really good job because I want a good job for a client, but at the same time I've got to do these things for the household, or that you start piling me up, or I start piling things up for myself, and I start at some point feeling angry, especially if I don't give in to overeating. If I don't want to be fat by overeating to cope with these things that I've tasked myself to do, I will end up feeling angry. It's the next thing.
Yeah.
Oh, you've not eaten it away. Here you go. Have some anger. So how do I deal with that? Was there something that you were going to say at that point?
No. I was, I think you were sort of explaining, because I was just wondering, because a lot of those voice notes are about being compassionate towards yourself. And how do you think specifically that helps with the anger side of things?
So I've got all these. So let's say here's a situation. I'm having a day where I've got lots of things to do. I'm running up against multiple deadlines. I know I've got to do certain things by the time, say, school pickup happens. But the time is running out. And because I don't want to overeat to help me be resilient and cope with it all, the anger kicks in, because that's the first emotion I start feeling. I start feeling angry that I've got all these things to do, and maybe there are other things that I should be giving to you to do or someone else. I'll start projecting out. But ultimately, I've wanted to do these things by this certain time. So the anger sits with me. At that point, with your suggestion, I pull out my phone because I'm feeling angry. And I say, I'm going to leave myself a compassionate voice note. So it's voice note number 58.
Of the day.
Of the day, thanks. And I start talking to myself as if I'm talking to my best friend. The compassion notes work because I am saying to myself, oh my goodness, I completely understand how you're feeling. Let's take a step back and look at all the things that you're trying to juggle. Is there anything that you can leave to one side? Talk to me about how you're feeling. I really love you. I really care about how I don't want you feeling this way. Let's pick it apart if you want to. I can try and give you some advice if you want. And I actually take that second person. So I was talking to myself, in third person, if you like. And as I'm talking it through, the anger starts dissipating, because I have moved from I'm in this bubble of feeling angry to I'm actually in this compassion zone of trying to help. But it doesn't stop there, because actually the thing that Maz heard and he's in turn taught me to do is that whilst it's dissipating and then I get it all out of my system in terms of trying to look after myself and support myself, I press stop, carry on with the day, continue meeting the deadlines, or I need to leave a second note, whatever. Yes, I have had to do that once or twice. I'm then to listen back at the end of the day. So I then have a collection of voice notes at the end of the day that I have to listen to. So it's not just about how I talk to myself. Otherwise, I wouldn't need the voice note. Yeah. The voice note is there to then listen to it back. And when I listen to it back, 1, 2, 5, there was a day I had 12 voice notes that I had to listen to in succession. I'm hearing my voice reassure myself, give myself compassion. The most important person to me should be me. The person to give love to myself should be me. And I have always struggled with that. Yeah. But listen to these compassion notes actually starts filling up this empty bucket that has been filled by food or has been knocked over with anger or whatever it might be. The compassion notes help it so that the next time I start feeling angry because I've hurt myself or because I've put too much on my plate in that particular day, actually the anger doesn't get to be as strong. Yeah. And I start to have that broken part where I'm able to say, actually, what am I feeling? Oh, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Oh, I'm feeling really stressed out. But how can I mitigate that stress? Is this something that can wait for another day? Do I really have to do this today? Yeah. Rather than I have to do it and I can only feel angry. So that's also been helpful. So asking how I feel about how I'm actually feeling, and if it's necessary to have that piece in between with the compassion note, then that also works. Because sometimes breathing doesn't cut it. Or staring out of the window for 10 seconds doesn't count it, because actually in that 10 seconds, the anger just continues to build. Yeah. So for me, these compassion notes have been super helpful. Well,
and I think actually you hit upon something just then, because I think a lot of the time, at least as somebody who doesn't suffer with anger issues.
I don't get that. How can you not suffer with anger?
Sorry.
It's amazing. I just find it amazing that somebody else doesn't have it. Because it's so ingrained.
It's just, but I think when I hear in passing, I've heard other people advise somebody with anger issues or whatever it might be. It tends to be along the lines of just do some breathing exercises, just do some yoga. I think
anger management. And all I want to say is, oh, fuck off.
Yeah, exactly. I think the problem is that's sometimes that's unrealistic, because if you're in the middle of doing things, or if you're just not that kind of person. For some people, that kind of thing might be revolutionary. It might be amazing. They might go from over time from being angry to being very Zen-like and doing their yoga and meditation religiously. And that would be handy. But I think a lot of people aren't really like that. And so they need other ways of being able to deal with this stuff, because their personality just might not be compatible with all of that very calm. It's going from one extreme to the other, and sometimes you need something a little bit more in the middle to deal with things in a more realistic way that's more compatible with day-to-day life. So yeah, I think the voice notes has been really helpful for you.
It's really helpful. And because the thing I'm thinking, would people outside of the home, I mean, even our kids wouldn't say it, but people outside of the home think that I would suffer from anger. But probably not. I'm naturally a cheerful, friendly person where I'm not forcing myself to be that person. I like to have a chat. I like to smile. I'm quite gregarious in that way. And I enjoy the day, and I enjoy my work, and I enjoy having a chat. But I suppose the anger thing for me is more, it's internal. Yeah. And then that can come out with being short shrift, slightly hasty. If I'm already struggling with something and therefore it makes me feel anger, if you then suggest something or ask me something, I'll snap at you. I'll be hasty, and you're like, don't talk to me like that. Who do you think you are talking to me like? I'm like, oh God, yeah, you're right, I'm so sorry. But it comes out even now. To you, I'm quite snappy.
Because I think because
you're angry already,
you're comfortable with me, and I think the problem for you sometimes is that things might happen in an average day where you might have an interaction. Someone might cut you up when you're driving, or someone might say something you're not particularly happy with.
0 to 10.
Yeah, but you don't necessarily. You're not, at this point anyway, able to just say to them, explain how you feel, or say it in a calm way.
No, because I'm still working out how to articulate that even to myself.
But the point is, you then internalise it and you store it up, and that kind of ball of frustration or whatever it might be.
If I'm not eating it away,
you'll kind of carry it with you, and eventually it has to come out somehow.
Yeah.
But I think that's
poor
also
you.
I'm all right. Poor you. I mean, I think we're pretty well suited. For all the good reasons, obviously. No, I think part of your journey really is for you to be able to, as an emotional person, for you to be able to say over time how you're feeling in the moment, and just discharge some of that emotion, and learn that it's okay to be an emotional person, and it doesn't have to come out as anger. It doesn't need to be stored up. It doesn't need to be this sort of latent energy that sort of bursts out when you don't want it to. But that if something does happen, or someone does something wrong, you can say so, and it's okay to say so. And but
because I question myself, because ultimately I'm not good enough. So if I'm not good enough, and somebody said something and I feel upset by it, or I'm getting better. 100%. I'm actually quite. I don't mind giving an opinion, like shit service in a restaurant. I'm quite happy to calmly say, actually, that's just not good enough. This is what I'm not happy with. And quite often we get free meals. That's not a bad thing. But no, if it's to do with me as a person, and someone said something and it affects me on a personal level, that's harder. Yeah. And so, yes, you're right. I will then end up feeling angry, not even necessarily at that person, but at the situation or at myself for holding back. Yeah. And then that's an angry thing that ends up, eating away at me. But yeah, I was a bit embarrassed about talking about feeling angry, especially if anyone's listening to this who knows me, because maybe I didn't want them assuming the kind of Incredible Hulk is lurking underneath the surface, and they come into our household and I'm just this whirlwind of Tasmanian devil. Oh, listen to all my references. Tasmanian devil or
Child of the 80s.
Child of the 80s. Or Incredible Hulk that... it's just a nightmare to be around. But it is more how I respond to things and how I feel. And it's not enough. I deserve better, and I don't want to feel anger. I'd rather feel the nuances of all the different feelings, and be able to have them, as you say, dissipate quicker, and just move on with my day. So that's part of my quest. I've got my food addiction, which I'm working through, and I've got my anger, which I'm working through. And yeah, I'd be delighted to if any of this has struck a chord for you who's listening to share. Now, how does your anger manifest itself, or what kind of, have you been on the receiving end of someone else's anger? Because there is no excuse for it. I might have had a dad who kind of took his anger out on us, and that causes me to feel angry, and then that in turn makes me snap at Maz or speak to him in a shitty way or get a bit spiteful or whatever it is. But there's no excuse, because he doesn't deserve that. And my dad might have had a really stressful job, or I'd still love to find out, were his parents angry people, and then that's what caused his. But there's no excuse.
No.
So whether this is you suffering from anger or you've been on the receiving end, there's no excuse for it. We all deserve better. And so let's try and pick that apart. So I'd love to hear from anybody who can, make me not feel like Billy No Mates on the anger front, or ask questions to either of us about how to deal with it if you're on the receiving end.
But if you either way, really, if you are on the receiving end, or if you're somebody who like Becky struggles with this kind of stuff, I think the first step is to exercise that self-compassion and to sort of see the situation for what it is. And I just think it's crucial to start with that step, to kind of there is no point, even if you are the one kind of with the anger issue, there's no point in starting with blame and turning it in on yourself. I think the road to being at least a little bit freer of that stuff is to give yourself some breathing space and to figure out in your own time sort of where this stems from. If it isn't as clean cut as Becky with her father, it could come from anywhere, and you need to give yourself that time to really explore without feeling guilty or
true.
Bad about yourself.
And it might take a while, but you've got to sit with it. I think that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Good luck. And if this doesn't strike a chord with you, hopefully it's just been interesting anyway. And you can listen to me washing my dirty laundry in public or whatever it is, airing it. Sorry, that's the phrase, isn't it?
That's it.
Washing my dirty laundry. Regardless, whatever time of day it is with you, hope you're going to have a lovely rest of whatever's left. And please do join us in future episodes where we'll be exploring more behaviours that we can pick apart. Our crap approach to things. I don't mean lives. I'm saying all the wrong thing now.
Crap lives.
Crap lives. Leave it there. No, when we explore our driving behaviours that hold us back, so that in turn, hopefully, something might help you or help each other on a wider basis. I've done it again. What a load of waffle.
The end.
The end.
Take care, everyone.